Good evening and welcome to the Year 12 Information Evening for the class of 2020, our graduates of the new decade. Thank you for your patience with us and our change of location from the MTC to the Hughes Centre. Our projectors are currently experiencing the technological version of a midlife crisis, and they require some time at the health farm before they will work for us again. Girls, I cannot believe that at the beginning of week 3, you and your contemporaries in other schools officially commenced the HSC, Year of Study. I say this to you with a great sense of shock, as you are the Year 7 cohort that I commenced with at KRB, and I cannot believe how quickly the time has flown. I say this not to be flippant, but because I feel I really need you to comprehend that this is it, the final year of secondary schooling. Having worked with students, staff and parents of Year 12 students for a long period of time, I know that it's a wonderful stage of learning and that your learning experience is dynamic, challenging, rigorous, engaging and inspirational. It's full of energy and laughter, which at times can turn to tears quite quickly. It's a time for fun, for discovery, for friendship, for mentoring, for dreaming, for socialising, for living. To borrow from Dickens, it can be the best of times and the worst of times. But it can be over in a flash. So students, I really want you to hear me when I say make the most of this year. Your educational experiences beyond school will be very different. Access to your teachers and their engagement in your learning process are things that many students take for granted. But you will most probably never have this same level of interest and interaction again. Engage with your teachers, interact in class, ask questions, seek feedback and work with them in breaking apart the key course skills and content. Make the most of the support networks here at KRB. The pastoral team, the counsellors, the careers counsellor, all are here to help. We often think of KRB as the village it takes to raise a child. Make the most of your final year. Participate fully in all the carnivals, events, the elements of community that have helped shape who you are, the liturgies, Sacred Heart Day, the retreats. Completely invest in all the things that have captured your imagination here. Keep working on your friendships and really nurture them throughout this final year. The cohort will become even more cohesive as soon as this journey starts, and you will want to be part of this. To repeat Miss Bartley, the student leadership team successfully launched the Year 12 theme to the community today, 2020 Vision. A clever play on words, but it was the ideas that accompany it that have really great meaning. As a year group, and indeed as a school community, everyone needs to play their part and everyone needs to work together. I often compare Year 12 to the city to surf. If you want to make it to Bondi, you have to train and train consistently. You can do it with no training, and the chances of you reaching your potential are slim, and the pressures that you place on your body may cause injury or illness. Or you can train consistently over time and reap the reward of personal success. Along the way, there are challenges, a bit like our own Heartbreak Hill, but your capacity to get up and over that hill is dependent on your consistent training. Yes, this is the HSC year, and consistency in your application to your studies is the key. What other elements do we need to add to successfully navigate Year 12? We need to build our confidence and belief in self. Take a risk and try the harder questions. Learn and grow from the feedback that you receive. We need to build our resilience. When I don't get the mark I thought I would, regroup and seek feedback to make change. We need to develop a greater sense of grit and persistence to get the job done. We need to be honest with ourselves about social media and the ability it has to distract us and deprive us of necessary sleep. Ask yourself this question: should your phone really be your alarm clock? When you wake in the middle of the night and check the time, do you also check Instagram? And most importantly, we need our family and friends and the support of the school to ensure that we are at our best. Girls, don't accept second best in anything that you do. Don't enter an exam room or complete a task without knowing that you are ready to present your best work. At KRB, we often use the phrase, to be the best you can be. This is not a motherhood statement, it's our core business, to assist you to grow to be your personal best. Challenge yourself to lift. While consistency in your studies is the key for long-term success, ensure that you have enough energy, enthusiasm, drive and sheer grit to push yourself a little bit harder in the last few weeks. Take yourself from a band 4 to a band 5, or a band 5 to a band 6. As a school, we believe that your success requires our commitment as well. Our commitment to provide quality teachers and quality teaching, and to give you clear and explicit feedback. John Hattie would argue that this is the greatest impact on student learning outcomes. Creating and sustaining a learning culture. Being abreast of change and syllabus material. Providing the right environment for girls to learn at their best. Ensuring that they belong and they have like-minded people sharing their journey. And educating girls for life to see value in education and collaboration, to love learning and to have a strong sense of self and others. It's not all about the students. Parents, the role you play is a vital one. You will be your daughter's best guide and support. It's a roller coaster, so strap yourselves in for a colourful ride. But the year does go quickly. And many of the girls say it's the best year of their life. A few tips. Affirm your daughter's confidence and nurture her. Encourage her to lead a balanced life: sport, social, work, study. Encourage her to eat well, sleep well, exercise and laugh often. Help her with managing her technology and social media. I invite you all to come to listen to expert Susan McLean next Thursday for advice in this area. Be familiar with your daughter's assessment schedule. Be aware of the peak times when small things at home may prompt stressful and unpleasant reactions. Share your daughter's success and help her to learn from any failures. Setbacks or marks that have been lost, direct her back to her teacher to seek explicit feedback about where and what was missed, rather than saying to her, "Oh, you should have got more for that task." So there is so much more to enjoy about the Year 12 journey, and we need to be an optimistic coaching team on the sideline. We need to stick together, school and parents, and dialogue often. And finally, you need to have faith in the process. We've been doing this for a very long time, and we'll be here to support you as parents. It's been a long time since my HSC year. In fact, I just did the calculation and my hair went instantaneously white. I know that the experience is different for everyone, but the power of the collective is strong. It is a journey that we navigate best together. Thank you. Could I introduce Ms. Dennis, who's going to speak to us about the HSC and the ATAR.
Good evening, everyone. It's really good to see quite a few parents here this evening. So I am going to talk a little bit about the HSC and the ATAR. Hopefully it will be helpful to some of you who may not be very familiar with the HSC and the ATAR, but I am also conscious that some of you may know a fair bit about the HSC and ATAR, but hopefully you will learn something perhaps that is helpful and new. So our Year 11s, it's been a very quick year, I'm sure. You're already about to commence the HSC program this term in week 3, as Ms Clark said. So at the moment, our girls are reflecting on Year 11 and making decisions about their HSC course program, which subjects they wish to continue with, which subjects perhaps they want to pick up in terms of extension subjects, and so on. Teachers at the moment are in the process of writing the reports for Year 11, and they should be available to parents and students. I believe it's the end of week 2 is when we're aiming for, but they're currently being written now. So as many of you would be aware, students, in order to qualify for an HSC, must complete 12 units of study in Year 11, or the preliminary course. But in Year 12, the HSC course, the minimum requirement is 10 units of study for the HSC in order to qualify and get the HSC credential. Many students, however, would take more than 10 units, some taking perhaps 11 or 12, 13, and in some cases maybe 14. Students must satisfactorily complete the preliminary course before they are eligible to commence the HSC course, and all of our students will be in that situation. We will complete our required hours at the end of week 2 and commence the HSC course in week 3. So the HSC, in comparison to the ATAR, the HSC is a credential for all students who meet the requirements of that, and students will receive a certificate which lists all of the subjects that they have completed at the HSC level, along with the results in those subjects and the grades and so on. So that is a credential that a student can take, that they have completed that level of schooling. The ATAR, however, is for students who wish to perhaps pursue their studies at a tertiary university level. Not all students wish to do that, so sometimes we might have students who are on a non-ATAR pathway, and that is absolutely acceptable. So it is not an expectation for all students that they would need or require an ATAR, and we are very, very open and supportive of that. So we have some students perhaps who are taking TAFE vet courses, for example, and they may not necessarily be on an ATAR pathway. However, the ATAR is for students wishing to gain university entrance. It is a rank and not a mark. So when you hear of a student attaining a wonderful ATAR of 95, a rank of 95, that means they're in the top 5% of that HSC cohort. The ATAR provides information about how students perform overall in relation to other students, so exactly what I just mentioned in terms of a percentile rank. It provides the discrimination required by universities for their selection processes. So universities will publish their expected ATARs for particular courses. They will vary depending on the demands of those courses and also the demands of people trying to get into those courses. So in terms of the assessment, which commences this term for Year 11 students going into Year 12, your official formal HSC assessment starts this term. Not all subjects will be assessing you this term, but there may be a few who commence their assessment program. So schools are asked to submit assessment marks to NISA, which illustrate the rank order and relative differences between students in terms of raw assessment marks. So you will be receiving shortly an assessment program for Year 12. It will clearly outline how many tasks you have, how much they're weighted, and we, at the end of that program, send in a single mark either out of 100 or out of 50 for your courses, depending on whether it's 2 units or 1 unit. That is sent to NISA. NISA then uses what's called a moderation process with the raw school-based assessment mark for each student for each of their courses. And moderation is a process which transforms the raw assessment sent in by the school to a similar distribution as the exam marks obtained by the school course group. So I'm going to go through that quickly in a minute so it makes a little bit more sense. The moderation process is designed to introduce commonality or equity amongst schools in terms of the assessment marks that they submit. So as many of you would be aware, the final HSC mark that you receive comes from 50% of your school mark that the school sends in based on your assessment programs of the tasks that you have completed, 50% from the school, and then 50% of your mark comes from the actual HSC exam that you will be sitting this year, this time, tomorrow, in a year's time, same as our current Year 12s. That gives you your final HSC mark. So the university's admission centre then calculates the ATAR based on those final HSC results. They take each of your courses, HSC results, and runs it through an ATAR calculation process, which involves some sort of scaling in terms of how subjects contribute to that particular ATAR. So in terms of the moderation process, in very basic terms, each school will obviously be running or conducting different assessment tasks. So it is a question of how do we make every school's assessment tasks equitable or in comparison the same. One school might have assessment tasks, for example, that range between 90 and 45%. Another school might be submitting their assessment tasks, which might range between 20 and 65%. The way that they make comparisons between schools is based on that HSC exam, because that is the common element. All students sit exactly the same HSC exam. So those two schools might perform exactly the same on that HSC exam. For example, they might be getting a range of 30 to 75%. So the moderation process involves moderating the two schools' raw school-based assessment marks so that they are the same or reflect how those students have performed in terms of their HSC exam performance. So to give you an example, this is what the school receives each year. You might not be able to actually see the numbers, but there are columns in that data called school assessment, moderated assessment, exam mark, HSC mark, and the band. This is a subject from 2017, the actual results that we get. So we send in the school assessment. The students go and sit the HSC. That is their exam mark column. That is how they performed in the exam. That exam mark is used to moderate the school marks. Finally, the HSC mark comes from half of the moderated mark, not the raw school mark, and half of the exam HSC mark. So once those marks have been moderated, the raw school marks are not used at all. They're simply used for moderation purposes. So to give you an example, I have got, again, a real subject that I have put in order of how the students performed based on their school marks, the ones that we submitted to NISA. These are in ranked order. The students then went and sat their exam, and they were the exam marks that the students actually achieved. Those exam marks are used to moderate our school assessment marks. And the way that they moderate them is they take the highest mark of 93. That is set as our top moderated mark. They take our lowest mark of 55, and that is set as our lowest moderated mark. And then everyone else is placed in between those marks. So you can see that 93, has set our top moderated mark for the student who actually got the top school-based assessment mark, and the 55 has set our lowest moderated mark. Some students ask, I might get a fantastic mark, and is that taken away from me? Well, no, that mark is not taken away from you. That person who got 93 on the HSC keeps that 93 of the HSC. That is their HSC mark. It is not taken away from them. However, it determines the top moderated mark for the school. So if that student didn't happen to perform at school as well as they did in the actual HSC, their mark will reflect that based on the moderation. But they still keep that 93 or whatever it may be as their HSC mark. The final HSC mark then comes from half of the moderated mark and half of the HSC mark. So as I said, the school-based assessment mark is no longer used. So the really, really important message for our students, and I really, really emphasise this particularly towards the end of Year 12, around this time or earlier, is your performance in the HS exam is crucial because it counts twice. One, because it contributes half of your final HSC mark, and two, because it determines the moderation for your year group and your subjects. The better you do as a cohort, the better you will benefit from the moderation. Okay, so the work that you still do between your trial exams and your HSC exams is crucial. You cannot think that the assessment program has finished at the end of the trial. You still need to keep working because you still have a further chance on that HSC exam because it's going to count really double, half of your final mark and the moderation that the school gets or you get as a group. So to calculate the ATAR, the university's admissions take the HSC marks, they put them through the ATAR moderator. 2 units of English must count in the ATAR calculation. It includes 2 units of English, could be any 2 units of English, it's your best 2 units. So it might take your extension unit and 1 of your advanced units, for example, but it takes your best 2 units of English and then your next best 8 units, whatever subjects you may have performed the best in, to give you a total of 10 units. It only uses 10 units. So if you are studying 12 units, it will not be using 2 of your lowest performing units. It will take the best 10 units. The reason we encourage you to take more than 10 units is because there is an element of risk if you are only relying on those 10 units of study. If something unfortunately happens, either in your assessment program or in the HSC exam itself, there is an element of risk. So just to run some examples of ATARs for you, there's a lot of numbers there. I don't know if it's going to be of particular interest or relevance at this point in time, but just to give you an idea of the kind of results that students are getting in order to get particular ATARs. That would be a student in the high 98s. That would be 90, above 90. These students take a variety of subjects. It's not always the subjects that typically people perceive that achieve the highest ATARs. You can take any subjects that you like. If you like them and you're good at them, it is going to contribute well to your ATAR. Once you get into those 90s, subjects become very similar in terms of their contribution to the ATAR. So if you are a brilliant drama student and you achieve 93 or something, that's going to contribute brilliantly to your ATAR. I guess the second message for students at this stage too is that it might seem daunting about trying to get an ATAR of, I don't know, 85 or 90 or something, when you're getting results back perhaps of 68% or something in a subject. The thing you need to be aware of is that moderation process. So if I actually go back to that slide, you'll see that some subjects from the raw to the moderated, there is quite a huge difference. So a student on 60 was being moderated to a 72. Now, if you're putting in marks into some ATAR calculator at the moment that you've found on Google, and you're putting in 60, it's not going to give you a very good ATAR. What you need to be considering is it's 72 that I need to be putting in. It's the moderated mark or even the final HSC mark, really, that you need to be putting in. So 60 is not what you should be making judgments about your subjects at this stage on. You should be seeing myself, Miss Valencia or Miss Angelou, to really get some proper advice about subject selection. Okay, so if you're getting 60 and something, you have not taken into account the moderation process. And if you put that number into the ATAR calculator, you're going to get a bit of a shock. Okay, just a final couple of things. The NISA website is obviously a wealth of information for students and parents in terms of syllabus information, past examination papers, exam rubrics, performance band descriptors, etc. So I'm going to hopefully pass on to two of our current Year 12 students. Is Alex and Fiona here yet? Not yet. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Miss Angelou. Miss Angelou is our Head of Curriculum. She's going to talk a little bit about curriculum and assessment. And we wanted you to be introduced to Miss Angelou. She is a new position at the school, our new Head of Curriculum, working quite closely with our senior students. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here for the very exciting part of the evening in terms of curriculum and rules and abiding by NESA's instructions. Basically, my role is to ensure anything to do with curriculum. I'm responsible for course information, study patterns, assessment rules and guidelines, helping students adhere to the NESA requirements, which are quite stringent in some areas, and making sure that overall students are eligible for HSC and ATAR if they would like to. The one thing that I'd like to point out is now you're coming to that crossroads at the end of Year 11 and into the beginning of Year 12, you have that opportunity to just revise your study pathway. As Ms Dennis has already pointed out, the minimum requirement has changed in the Year 12 course. We also offer some extension courses from Year 12 only after you've completed the preliminary course. So some of the extension courses might be Extension English, Extension History, amongst others. So if you are looking at taking up one of those new courses, or you're looking at dropping a course, then you need to organise an interview with either myself, Miss Dennis, or Miss Valencia. You must have that interview so that we can go through those procedures and ensure that you are still meeting the requirements needed to gain those HSC credentials. So moving on, the internal assessment, which is what we talked about, is really part of 50% of your HSC results. A lot of that is organised by the school, and we organise the planning and the dates, etc. In the next couple of weeks, all students will be receiving an assessment course guideline in which every single course, the weightings, the dates, and the types of tasks will be outlined to the students. It's my very strong advice to take a look at that and start planning for the year in advance. look at some of the major assessment tasks, look at what time you need in the lead up to that, and organise your time and plan your time. And that might be planning for things such as family holidays that happen or family reunions that happen within that year. How are you going to organise your assessments around that so you can do both and not feel too much pressure? So that is coming in the next 2 weeks, and it will be available in hard copy, but I will also be posting it on the school website or the school box, the new platform that we have for students to be able to access. Now, what happens if things go wrong or don't go to plan? Things are going to happen. Us being human, we may get sick, we may have a misadventure of some sort. We are here to help you get through that and still meet the requirements of the HSC and still meet the rules that NESA gives us. So just a couple of things that I'd like to point out to you to be aware. If you are sick or you have a misadventure, including the day of the assessment task or 2 days before, anywhere up to 2 days before, we require documentation. So that may be a doctor's certificate or another form of official documentation depending on the situation. And I'll just stress that again, 2 days before. If you decide that you need some time to prepare for the upcoming test and you say, oh, it's okay, I'll take the day off before, we require a doctor's certificate. This is to allow an even playing field for everybody and make sure that everybody is walking into that assessment with the same access. So what happens if you do get sick? Don't panic. You follow the school guidelines, but some of the most important things is that you do get the documentation, make sure you do get to a doctor, and then on your return to school, you go to Miss Murphy, our head of operations, and you get an illness misadventure form. That needs to be filled out. And also, the first thing in your priority is actually getting that submission in or sitting that exam. So on your very first day returning to school, you need to ensure that you go and see Miss Murphy and we organise that for you so that you can get the assessment done. It's all about helping you get through it and helping you ensure that you're meeting the requirements. Occasionally we get a request for extensions. Extensions can only be granted in quite exceptional circumstances. So that if there is something that's going on in your life, if there is something that's causing you a problem with being able to meet the assessment requirements, you should be coming to see Miss Murphy again and discussing that with her. And if it is grounds for an extension, of course we're going to help you. But if it's something as simple as I slept in this morning and I'm late for my test and can I just do it this afternoon instead, that's not really grounds for an extension. So while we are willing to consider it, they are granted in exceptional circumstances. One thing that I'd just also like to last thing I'd like to bring to our attention is the idea of malpractice. I'm not going to go into great detail, but the NESA website is very clear on that, and all students who are sitting in front of us now have been through a course called All My Own Work. This sets out the rules and regulations, and students are very aware of what good scholarship entails. And basically, we're again trying to avoid one student over another getting an advantage where they don't deserve it. They could include things like plagiarism, cheating, copying, getting a tutor to write the essay for them, but there are others in there. In those cases, it could result in a zero result for that assessment task. But in every case, we are required to report it to NESA, in which they log it on their register of malpractice in HSC tasks. So it is considered quite a serious offence if a student is caught participating in malpractice. On a nicer note, if you're looking for more information, in the next couple of weeks, students will be receiving our information booklet, our Kincoppal Assessment Guidelines booklet, which will outline all that you need to know. That will also be posted on School Box, where students will have electronic access. And then, of course, there's the NESA guidelines. The NESA will be producing a student handbook, and the students will be receiving that in the next couple of weeks. And also anything to do with HSC examinations, what's allowed inside the room, what's stipulated as correct information, etc. All is on the NESA website. It's a great read for those of you who are interested. But of course, if there are any questions, you can always come and have a chat to me or give me a call. Thank you.
So I'd like to introduce and thank very much Alex and Fiona, two of our current Year 12 students who are going to come and provide us with some tips and strategies and some general advice from their experience of Year 12 in the HSC. And we wish you well, girls, for your exams starting tomorrow, and really appreciate your time.
Hi everyone. So Year 12 for me has been a roller coaster of emotions, assessments and experiences, and coming into it I was told balance of exercise, study, sleep and a social life was the key, the hack you might say. But I also have 4 other pieces of advice which I think speak more to the struggle that is Year 12. Firstly, it's important to run your own race. Year 12 is about you and only you can do it. Take your time and work at your own pace, because ultimately consistency pays off in the end, and that's what I think all of us Year 12s are figuring out now, when it's a little bit too late. All those nights with Donna at the library until 8:30 with her snacks and at your desks will be worth it, I promise. Secondly, it's really important to trust the process. I'm guilty of this because we all think that we know a lot better than our teachers, but ultimately they're the ones that know what it takes to do well. So trust all the homework, all the essays, all the different little things they ask you to do, because they know what's going to work and they know how to get you there in the end. Thirdly, it's important not to sacrifice the things that you love. I know that we're all guilty of this, but we think that a little bit of extra study here and there is more important than a family lunch or any other thing that might be happening. Because ultimately you'll look back in Year 12 and you won't remember all the study nights and all those extra little marks that you got along the way. Remember the 18th, the lunches, the fun Fridays, and everything that's positive about Year 12. So it's important not to forget about these little things as you're going through it. And lastly, which I think is probably the most important, is to take advantage of everything throughout Year 12. Because whether it be early entry to unis, a new sport, joining the choir, doing something for social justice or anything along the way, there's no harm in testing the waters, because ultimately that's what you're going to be doing next year, so it's good to dip your feet in, you might say. I myself applied for a cadetship at UBS and I'm still waiting to hear for the final end of that. But even if I don't get it, I think that going into that, it's really shifted my view to know that that's what I want to do next year. So it's important to take these opportunities while you have the ability to kind of look at what your options are. So yeah, that's probably my advice. Good luck for the rest of the year.
So for Year 12, I tried to make a balanced lifestyle. I didn't really succeed, but these are sort of the things that I wish I did do. So sleep. Make sure you get 7 to 8 hours each night. So like build a routine and like stick by it. Even when it gets like tough and you're only getting 4 or 5 hours, make sure you stick to those 7 to 8 and don't take naps, because you get into the habit of it. And a lot of my friends are now napping every single afternoon and really regretting it. So try not to do that. Find a hobby that's not screen related. You'll find that you spend a lot of time on your laptop this year. So try to find a hobby that's not screen related. Do it with some friends. Even if it's like fitness, don't give up on sport, because you'll really regret it when you come around to grad ball season. Self-care. So a lot of my friends really are into skincare, and that's sort of how they pamper themselves each night, prepare themselves for the day ahead. They just take 5 minutes to just relax, do some skincare. Maybe you just want to like highlight some notes if you find that really entertaining. I don't know. For these holidays, the summer break holidays, this is a time that I found I used really wisely. I had 2 depth studies for science coming up, and we got those before the holidays. I made sure I spent time relaxing with family, and I spent December doing nothing, basically. But January, I was in the library at least once or twice a week, and I found that when I came to the start of term 1, I was really prepared for that assignment. I had my notes and I understood what the assignment needed me to do. So I watched all my friends go through the stressful period, especially the night before cramming, but I was prepared. So I suggest that if you do have an assignment, a major work, get it done in those holidays, plan it out, and you'll find that you're just so much not stressed. So try and do that. And also during that time, please read your English texts. You'll really regret it if you don't. Yes, I speak from experience. Next, I wanted to talk about building up your resume. You have a lot of time to build it up, but a lot of us leave it to the last moment. These holidays, you can do a cadetship, you can do a summer school, you can even get a job over the holidays. It makes your resume look so much better, so I suggest you do that. Also, if you haven't done a work experience, get one and do it, because you have to write a little bit about yourselves and your experiences. If you're applying for a specialist degree or even to colleges, they ask you about your community activities, what you've done in leadership, what your experiences are. So I suggest you try and do a work experience in these holidays. It's too hard to do them later on, so if you haven't done one, do it now. And then for exams, I have this pen, and I suggest you find a pen, because when you go into an exam, you don't have your notes, so find a pen, and that's your constant. I really like my pen, and it's my safe thing in an exam, so get one. It's really good. Anyway, enjoy Year 12, don't stress it, just let it go and have fun.
Good evening, everybody. I am the Careers Advisor, or Student Opportunity and Career Education Advisor is my full official title, but call me whatever. I'm happy with that. I've really enjoyed the last 3 years here and really enjoyed getting to know these students really well, and I've had the privilege of actually knowing this cohort for quite some time, and this cohort was actually the first that we did some strengths profiling on back in Year 10, as you all might remember, and I'm hoping you might have your strengths reports on your desktops, as I suggested you might save them to, but if not, certainly I can provide a copy with that, a copy again for you guys, because it's going to be really useful for you this year, and it really links into our career services program goal here at Kincoppal, which is to engage and support students to develop awareness of their strengths and interests, their knowledge of subjects, courses and other options, and the skills needed to thrive in the changing world of work. That strengths profile is great language in it, and will be really familiar to you because it's really targeted around how you like to think and work. So I would encourage you to get that out. You can use that strengths profiling as your opening statement in your resumes. So it's really useful. It's going to be really useful for you to look at how you like to work and learn, which is actually really important for university selection. What sort of university will you thrive in? It may be a smaller, more intimate environment where you've got closer contact with your lecturers, or you may enjoy the academic input from a large university with lots of researchers available to access. So take a look at that strengths report. I really encourage you to do that. In terms of specific career services focuses for just Year 12, obviously I've been working with you guys since Year 10, but specifically for Year 12, we're looking at more detailed counselling and assessment. We started with the strengths profiling. I am qualified to analyse Moresby assessment, which is actually quite a great career tool. And if anybody wants to opt in for some additional, more traditional style of career assessment, which will give you, connections between personality and aptitude and interests, please do let me know. There is a small cost, and it's something that you do in your own time, but I'm very happy to analyse that. So I've had a few students already take up the Moresby testing. Another focus for me with Year 12s is certainly the promotion of information and opportunities. That's key. Alex mentioned the cadetship that she's currently still in the final stages for UBS, and we wish her the best of luck. She's such a great candidate, and we were successful last year in another candidate as well. They're the opportunities that you need to listen out for and engage in. Subjects change support has been mentioned a few times, and we're well into that at the moment. Resume support is really, really important. There was a record number of resumes coming across my desk to edit from the Year 12s who have just graduated. We've got some great resumes available for you to build on, analyse, copy, lots of great shells. So I encourage you all to think about a resume. You'd be surprised how often you'll get asked for it before you finish here, even if you haven't applied for a job, but I would encourage you to think about that as well. Also in Year 12, scholarship application support, gap years can be quite popular here, residential colleges likewise, and obviously support for university entrance, perhaps more vocational TAFE and college pathways as well. We do like to engage our alumni and parent community in different industry workshops and events, so do get engaged in those so you can get that exposure to A, how important that alumni network is, and B, careers and industries that you perhaps might not have thought of and where they're going and what the future looks like. So please do come to those events. Not wanting to sort of overwhelm you, but I thought I'd just go through over the next few slides key events for the next 4 terms for you all. Beginning obviously with this term, and apologies for anybody who's going through UAC for the 2nd or 3rd or even 4th time perhaps. Things do change a little bit. For example, this year for the first time, UAC has changed their opening for applications. It was moved forward about 4 months, so things do change. So this term, obviously we're well into interviews at the moment, it's keeping us very busy. There will be a gap year lunch information session next month for those perhaps considering some form of a gap year, and there are many types of gap years. The key for a gap year, if it's something you're considering, is to set a goal. It should be structured, it should provide opportunity, it should help you analyse what you're interested in and be busy and full. And also perhaps US college testing. If you're thinking about studying abroad in the US, generally US testing is done twice, so often students do it at the end of Year 11 and then again at the start of Year 12, so it doesn't combine with any other key testing things here like the HSC. Okay, term 1 next year, I go to a lot of career advisor information days in the first couple of months, and these are key times for me to get the really current updated information on course changes and entrance changes at the universities, which I do feed back to you all via portal and other methods. GAPA applications usually are done at the beginning of the year. In particular, there's quite a popular school that some of you may know of, Dragon School in Oxford. They take about 30 GAPAs a year. Many Australians across, particularly across the eastern seaboard, head across to Dragon, and they are the first school to open their GAPA applications, and they are usually during January. So have a think about coming to see me by the end of this year if you are considering Dragon, perhaps. Other things to consider, the Australian Defence Force does a fabulous structured gap year, and that is quite early in the year in terms of applications. Some university applications do open as well at the very beginning of the year. The ANU is the first to do this. They are usually the first university to open. Note, please, that the ANU does not live in the university's admissions centre anymore. There is still some opportunity to use them as a pathway at the end, but the main source of offers for the ANU come through direct application, which I'll get the ANU in as early as possible in the new year to go through their application process. Some scholarships do start, applications open very early in the year as well. The very well-known Tuckwell Scholarship at the ANU generally opens sort of end of February, early March, and the Hanson Scholarship is a new one, a very big one similar to Tuckwell at the University of Melbourne, which opens then as well. UCAT testing, the new terminology for undergraduate medical entrance testing, which changed this year, does open in term 1. We are in discussions with a provider to potentially deliver a workshop just for interested Kincoppal students here on site. So I will keep you guys abreast of dates for that. It will depend on interest, of course, but it'll be financially better and very targeted for students here. And the earlier you get increased awareness to what that test looks like, the better. So if you're interested, I will let you know. In term 2, that's when a lot of the lunchtime presentations happen. The universities like to come in here and visit us. A lot of you already have enjoyed presentations as a Year 11 student. I tend to invite Year 12 and Year 11, so if you missed out on those this year, please make an effort to come to those. We all go to the expo at Moore Park, the HSC and Careers Expo at the end of May. It's an evening event and a compulsory event for students. UAC very kindly now head our way in the evening. It'll probably be around the sort of first week of June. We do a combined Cranbrook Kincoppal event where UAC will go through all the details. Support for early entry applications, it gets very busy in term 2. The University of New England opens, Notre Dame University, Australian Catholic University, Charles Sturt, Wollongong and Macquarie, including others. And of course that UCAT testing happens in the July school holidays. The final term, term 3, is a very busy one. I meet with all students to really make sure that their university application system, if they're looking in New South Wales, is set up properly, and we talk through preferences one-on-one. There's increased support for scholarship and any additional paperwork. Veterinary science, medicine requires additional paperwork, so that is an important thing in term 3. There will be a lot of acronyms coming at you in term 3. UAC, the University's Admissions Centre, really love 3-letter acronyms, and there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to overwhelm you with those now. But essentially in term 3 is the time that we will support students if they need additional support through bonus points or adjustment factors, as they're now called, for a setback, a major disadvantage that has been out of their control, that's occurred in Year 12 or perhaps in Year 11 as well in some circumstances. So this is the time in term 3 where we work through those things. Residential college applications are very active in term 3. Melbourne Uni is becoming increasingly popular, and the college applications are really important at that time. Girls looking to study in the UK and the US are now very busy engaging teachers and myself with references and editing their personal statements and essays. So it's a very busy time for us, applications abroad at the moment. And of course, any other applications to vocational colleges and TAFE, etc. happen at this time. In late August, I do get to spend a day with the Year 12s where there's a pupil-free day for other students, but we do a great careers day together. So I look forward to doing that with you guys. And please get to the Uni Open Days. They are in usually mid to late August and September. Really critical events for you guys to go to. I know I bumped into a few of you at the Sydney one, for example, this year, so I know you have been engaging in those already, which is wonderful. For anybody considering law at the University of New South Wales, and in fact, if you're considering law, period, and not necessarily thinking New South as your first preference, I would still encourage you to perhaps apply to sit the LSAT. It's the only university here that requires a law admissions test. It's not a huge amount of preparation and it's not meant to be a stressful event, but it does provide an opportunity to perhaps, if your ATAR doesn't hit the mark for law, which is obviously very, very high, and your admissions test is good for the LSAT, that it does balance it out. So it's actually a really good test to consider. Just finally, some important reminders. The University's Admission Centre that we've been referring to tonight is just for New South Wales. So each state has their own admission centre, VTAC for Victoria, QTAC for Queensland, etc. Tasmania is on its own. It's a direct application university there. As I mentioned, UAC now opens earlier in the year in April. Please make a note of those key dates. So check the portal, check my emails. I like to put posters down in the meeting room, down in the hub. So please keep an eye out for dates. As Alex said, apply, and Fiona as well. Give things a go. By applying for schemes through UAC or scholarships, or perhaps looking at an early offer. And again, it may not be your first preference. It may just be an opportunity to secure an offer. And it could be your third or fourth, but it's there. These things give you an opportunity to write your resume, to do a personal statement, to have an interview. These are all really great things to do. Watch out for those congestion points. If you are thinking about studying abroad and thinking about undergraduate medicine, unfortunately those processes do clash with the trials for the UCAT medicine. And then, as I mentioned, the students doing the applications now for the US is clashing with the HSC. So, use that as perhaps a decision-making tool. If perhaps undergraduate medicine may not be the best thing because that will be too stressful during trial periods, we can think about other pathways. So do keep that in your mind. And some design courses do require a portfolio as well for submission. So keep hold of those things that inspire you during design and tech and art and things like that. Careers page on the portal, I know that is changing to a new source of information through Schoolbox, and that will be carried over. Feel free to photograph this slide, and it is on the portal as well, but there's a great news feed that comes through from MHS Careers that we subscribe to, and that is on the portal, and you can get all up-to-date information from the universities that way. I live in the main building next door to the Year 11 common room, so that's where you'll find me, and look forward to hearing from all of you during the next year. Thank you.
I'm going to round out the evening by talking about academic care, our pastoral program. And I've just included here a little idea of the pastoral mentors and I together as a team. These are the kinds of things you can see behind you that are sort of our vision for what we want your Year 12 to be like. And you can see that we go a little bit beyond those concrete things like your marks and your results and the courses that you get into, because we're thinking as well more broadly, taking a step back and thinking about your overall experience as a KRB girl and the final year that you'll have to cap that off. So we're really looking at things like the way you stretch yourself and extend yourself throughout the year. The way that you develop in your knowledge of self throughout the year is actually extraordinary. There is huge growth that happens through the year, not just with your academics. We're really looking at you bolstering those connections you have and really feeling close with people and really feeling an atmosphere of love during Year 12. It's important. Growing through the challenges that you face, because when you look back, you probably won't remember the things that went really well. You'll actually remember those moments of adversity and how you came out the other end, and that makes for a way better story. And we're also thinking of it as it's the bridge. It's the bridge that gets you from the schoolgirl to the young woman outside of school. And this is the year that will get you there in so many ways. Academic care happens at all different times and in different settings. We have a morning check-in, 15 minutes every morning in groups with pastoral mentors, because we have really robust research and evidence that tells us that students do well and thrive academically and personally when they know that they belong to a community and they have people they regularly connect to. We have a fortnightly pastoral period, and all kinds of things happen during those periods. In fact, a lot of the teachers that have spoken to you today will come in and speak at the girls at targeted times throughout the year. So if we're moving up to exams, we might have a refresher on moderation and scaling, if that's what the girls are feeling fearful about, or we might have a refresher on examination procedure, or we might have a careers update. So we also get people coming in externally, and we look at mental health, relaxation, mindfulness, all different kinds of things. And then there is also additional support, individual support, that's offered on an as-needs basis. And that might mean meeting with your parents, meeting with an external person that supports you. It might mean having some help with your organisation for a short period of time to get you through, or maybe it's an ongoing support for you. So that's something that happens on an individual basis for lots and lots of different girls. I was really trying to think this evening of, if you haven't been through the HSC before, or maybe even if you have with other students, what to expect of the year. And I tried to reflect back on, this is my 5th cohort of girls now going through that 2-year cycle of Year 11 and Year 12. And for the first time I kind of arrived at this idea that there are distinct phases of the HSC, and they all feel a little bit different. And so I thought I would share that to see if it was of interest, and maybe it's going to be useful for you. So at the moment we are just starting, and it's very fresh, and that's why I chose that prayer about springtime and new beginnings. And I've seen it even in the last 2 days, that there is a huge energy. You know, people have bought new stationery. They're like, right, this is the year, this is the one, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to keep these folders organised. I saw somebody organising her locker yesterday, and I thought, yes, she's getting organised. So there is this incredible buoyancy and a real desire to kind of set fresh goals and have that lovely start. And that's actually a really, really nice time that carries through. And there might be a couple of assessments this term, there will be a few later on, but really it's a term about finding your feet and harnessing the energy and trying to coast on that energy for as far as we can. In term 1, we're all over it. We've hit our stride. We know what it's like to be in Year 12 now. We've got the balance going, we've got our subject selection correct. You know exactly what's going on in all your courses and the teaching styles, and you know what's coming up in terms of assessment, and there is a really good rhythm. And then there is this move towards an assessment block at the end of that term. So it's always sort of working towards this end point of that assessment block, which then comes along, and then the holidays are there. Term 2, anecdotally from my experience of year groups, is actually the most challenging time of the year. It isn't trials or the HSC. It's a long term, it's the winter term, it's right in the middle of the year. Energy reserves are getting a little bit low, and instead of moving towards a consolidated examination block where you can sort of you really sort of zoom towards one point, it's like a hurdle race, but the hurdles are even closer together than they should be in the Olympics. Okay, so it's one assessment after the other, and this is where we'll often have a little bit of a panic point or a breaking point and some real difficulties. The added level of complexity there is that there are many major projects and things that girls are working on. They're not necessarily due at the end of term 2, but the bulk of the work has to get done before the trials. So we have girls juggling multiple commitments there, and it can be really, really challenging. It's not impossible because, you know, around 100 kids definitely survive it every year, but just in terms of those expectations of what you might think the hardest things are, in my experience, highest Kleenex consumption, term 2. Term 3 has 2 very different facets. Early in term 3, it's all about the trials. We have some intense revision, then we go through the trials, and then you have a bunch of actual HSC examinations that happen, like language examinations and practicals for music and drama, that kind of thing. So it's extremely intense. But then later in term 3, after those things are over, it's the most beautiful time because it's all about our rituals, our KRB traditions kicking in. And we have our mother's luncheon and Vale and things like that. The girls are revising, etc., but they are also reflecting on their entire education, their time as a schoolgirl. They're looking forwards, they're saying goodbye, they're thinking about their gratitude, and they're doing a lot of summing up, and it's a really, really beautiful time, and you will be involved in many of those rituals and processes. So that's an interesting phase as well. So you can see how various these phases are and how the landscape of the year really changes a lot. So how do we make it through such a challenging landscape? The first thing I think it's really important to do, and this is for the girls going through and also for the support team of parents, is to have a really good idea that we don't do our HSC in massive chunks. We do it in absolutely tiny steps. Tiny habits, tiny things make the difference. 10 minutes revising your French vocab every night is way better than a 3-hour crazy session the night before the exam. Or a few minutes of reading your novel in advance every night is way better than trying to read 400-page Emma in a weekend. Okay, so tiny things that you do. And that gives you the leeway that if something doesn't go well, it is also something tiny, okay? When we see that an assessment didn't go well, that assessment itself is not going to be your ATAR, it's not going to be your final mark. It's a tiny proportion of a mark that becomes a tiny proportion of a mark that goes into another mark, okay? So seeing things in perspective, doing small things that build up, and also seeing disappointments and challenges as the small things that they are and not allowing them to cloud our entire vision. The other thing is, when things don't go well, often I believe that we need to give ourselves space to feel the emotions of disappointment. It's no use saying to someone who has underperformed or missed something or missed out on an opportunity, it's no use saying, oh, don't cry, don't be upset, it's fine, look on the bright side. Here, write in your gratitude journal. That doesn't work in the moment. You need that 24-hour rule, you need to get the emotions out, and the next day you can act. The next day often you don't need to act because the storm has passed and the perspective is back, okay? So acting in the midst of emotion and disappointment or whatever it may be isn't going to serve you very well. So often we as the adults around the girls are that delaying force saying, okay, tonight just mope, tomorrow we'll have a chat about it again, and often you might be more worried the next day than your daughter is because she's been able to let go, okay? So often just that little delay I think is really useful. I'm aware that we're running out of time, so on the next few slides I've just written down what some of the key events are in Year 12. However, I don't have access to the calendar yet, so the dates aren't there, it's just roughly the terms, and this will be made available to you anyway. So I just sort of wanted to show you the mix of things that happen, important events that happen in Year 12, but I don't think it's really important enough to go over time to do that. So as I've said, I'm sort of waiting for calendar dates to be firmed up, and as soon as that happens I create a list for you that I make available to all parents just so that you can have that forward planning for all the different kinds of things that happen throughout the year. So the final word is going to be with Miss Clark, so I'll hand over to her.
This is particularly for the parents. I just wanted to address a fairly major change that's been happening in the school over the last term and will continue to happen over the next 2 terms, and that is the consolidation of our IT support systems so that the portal that you have wrangled with for the last 6 years is about to be retired. However, what I would really ask if you could really connect with our newsletter over the next term or so. It comes out every fortnight. It comes out week 2, week 4, week 6, week 8. There will be important information in that for parents about what is coming. We're basically using a learning management system called Schoolbox. It won't be called that for much longer. We've had a naming competition and we're about to launch the name. And what that will do will give you as a parent greater visibility about what is going on in the school without the need to go to many different places. So it replaces Moodle, it replaces the portal and many of the different systems that we have. Unfortunately, the student who entered the name Poodle to replace Moodle and Portal, that was not successful, just in case that was you. Oh, it was one of you. Well, great name, but you didn't win, I'm sorry. But we think that this will be a great move forward for us here at KRB and hope that as parents, thanks girls, and we hope that as parents that it's something satisfactory for you as well. But just be aware that there will be invitations, for example, to participate perhaps in some trials. The staff have been using it for a term. It will be released to the students in week 3 for the term, and it will be released to the parents at the beginning of term 1 next year. So there will be some information about how to access things. So bye-bye portal. Okay. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. All our speakers are here except for our lovely Year 12 girls. If you would like to speak to anyone, there's tea and coffee outside. Thank you very much for coming.